CIA mind control experiments, 1953 to 1973. MKUltra was a covert CIA program conducting illegal human experiments to develop mind control techniques. Beginning in 1953, the program administered LSD to unwitting American and Canadian citizens. The CIA wanted methods for controlling human behavior for interrogations and psychological warfare. Experiments included sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and torture. The program operated through 80 institutions, including colleges, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. When exposed in 1975, CIA Director Richard Helms had ordered most records destroyed. MKUltra began when Director Alan Dulles feared America was falling behind in psychological warfare. Project leader Sidney Gottlieb received unlimited funding to experiment on humans without their knowledge or consent. The program explored LSD and other drugs, believing substances could make people reveal secrets or be programmed to carry out missions without awareness. Researchers administered massive LSD doses in uncontrolled settings. Some subjects suffered permanent psychological damage. Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron at Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute subjected patients to massive electroshock, drug-induced comas lasting weeks, and sensory deprivation. His psychic driving technique forced patients to listen to repeated messages for 16 hours daily. He attempted to erase memories and reprogram behavior. Patients entering with minor anxiety emerged with severe brain damage, unable to recognize family. The CIA operated brothels in San Francisco and New York, where prostitutes dosed clients with LSD, while agents watched through mirrors. Operation Midnight Climax studied drug effects on people who didn't know they were drugged. Some victims suffered permanent psychological damage with no understanding of what had been done to them. Prisoners were given LSD and subjected to interrogation to determine if false memories could be implanted. The program unraveled in 1973 when Helms learned of investigations and ordered files destroyed. Financial records that survived led to the Rockefeller Commission and Church Committee hearings in 1975. Frank Olson, a CIA employee dosed with LSD, fell to his death in 1953. His family was told it was suicide, but evidence suggested murder because he was preparing to reveal biological weapons programs. The Supreme Court ruled in 1988 the CIA could not be held liable because victims had no way to know they were experimented on. Thousands received no compensation despite permanent damage. Most records were destroyed, so the true extent will never be known. Whether useful intelligence techniques resulted remains classified, but the human cost was enormous. MKUltra stands as a reminder of what happens when intelligence agencies operate without oversight, pursuing goals with no ethical constraints. Operation Number 2. Operation Mockingbird. CIA Media Control, 1950s to 1970s. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA program to influence domestic and foreign media. Beginning in the early 1950s, the CIA recruited journalists and executives to plant stories, suppress information, and shape public opinion. The operation involved major organizations, including the New York Times, CBS, and Time magazine. Journalists on CIA payroll wrote articles promoting agency interests while suppressing damaging stories. At its peak, the CIA controlled or influenced hundreds of journalists at virtually every major American news organization. CIA officer Frank Wisner conceived the operation believing media control was essential for psychological warfare. He recruited Washington Post publisher Philip Graham as a key ally. Graham introduced CIA officers to journalists and publishers willing to cooperate. Some journalists were directly employed by the agency, working undercover as reporters. Others were paid freelancers who wrote articles based on CIA information. Many cooperated without payment, out of patriotism, believing they were fighting communism. The CIA particularly targeted foreign news organizations. The agency funded magazines and newspapers in other countries, using them to publish propaganda disguised as journalism. These foreign outlets would then be cited by American journalists, giving CIA propaganda the appearance of independent confirmation. This circular reporting made it impossible for the public to distinguish genuine news from intelligence manipulation. Operation Mockingbird suppressed stories about CIA activities. Editors who cooperated with the CIA would kill stories or delay publication. If damaging stories couldn't be stopped, the CIA worked with friendly journalists to publish competing articles, questioning critical reporting. This protected the CIA from accountability and allowed operations to continue without public awareness. The operation expanded during the 1960s as the CIA became involved in coups worldwide. Journalists built support for CIA-backed leaders, while undermining leaders the agency opposed. Articles described foreign leaders as communists or threats, creating justification for interventions. Many journalists had no idea information came from the CIA. Operation Mockingbird unraveled when Carl Bernstein published an article in Rolling Stone in 1977, revealing CIA infiltration of media. Bernstein documented relationships with over 400 American journalists and dozens of news organizations. Congressional investigations confirmed the program. The Church Committee found the CIA had violated its charter by manipulating American media. New guidelines prohibited the CIA from paid relationships with accredited journalists, though critics noted significant loopholes. Whether similar programs continue remains debated. The CIA claims it no longer recruits American journalists, but maintains foreign media relationships. The classified nature of intelligence makes it impossible to know definitively. Operation Mockingbird revealed government media manipulation was standard practice for decades. Whether those practices truly ended or became more sophisticated continues to fuel distrust. Operation Number 3. Operation Northwoods. False Flag Proposals. 1962. Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation presented to President Kennedy in 1962. The Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed staging terrorist attacks on American targets and blaming Cuba to justify military intervention. Plans included bombing U.S. cities, sinking boats carrying Cuban refugees, staging assassinations of Cubans in the United States, and conducting fake attacks on Guantanamo Bay. The proposals showed the military was willing to kill American citizens to create war justification. Kennedy rejected the plan, and it remained classified until 1997. The U.S. government was obsessed with removing Fidel Castro after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. The Joint Chiefs, chaired by General Lyman Lemnitzer, developed proposals for covert operations to justify U.S. military action. The Northwoods documents outlined a terror campaign conducted by U.S. personnel disguised as Cuban agents. One proposal called for sinking a boatload of Cuban refugees fleeing to Florida. After the sinking, a fake victim list would be published to generate public outrage. Real refugees would be secretly rescued, while the fake boat would be sunk, creating the appearance Castro murdered fleeing people. Another proposal involved U.S. forces disguised as Cubans attacking Guantanamo Bay, causing casualties among American service members. The plan noted this could cause actual deaths, emphasizing the military's willingness to sacrifice American lives. The documents proposed hijacking aircraft and either blowing them up or claiming they were shot down by Cubans. One scheme involved creating a fake aircraft blown up while a duplicate landed elsewhere. Passengers would be CIA employees using aliases. Funerals would be staged for fake victims. Additional proposals included staging riots by Cuban agents in U.S. cities and blowing up an American ship similar to the USS Maine incident. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara forwarded the proposals to President Kennedy in March 1962. Kennedy rejected Operation Northwoods completely, and shortly after removed Lemnitzer as chairman, reassigning him to NATO. The proposals were classified for 35 years. When declassified in 1997, the proposals shocked even those familiar with Cold War operations. They showed the highest military leadership was willing to consider staging terrorist attacks on Americans to justify war. Kennedy's rejection prevented implementation, but the willingness of military leaders to propose such operations raised disturbing questions. Operation Northwoods is cited as documented evidence that false flag proposals are not conspiracy theories, but historical fact. The documents remain one of the most disturbing examples of Cold War thinking, where defeating communism justified virtually any method, including terrorism against Americans. Operation Number 4. COINTELPRO, FBI Surveillance and Disruption, 1956 to 1971. COINTELPRO was an FBI program designed to surveil, infiltrate, discredit, and disrupt domestic political organizations. Beginning in 1956, the program targeted civil rights leaders, anti-war activists, feminist organizations, and political groups. FBI agents infiltrated organizations, spread false information, encouraged violence, and used illegal surveillance. The program resulted in deaths, imprisonment of innocent people, and undermining of legitimate movements. When exposed, COINTELPRO revealed systematic violation of constitutional rights by the FBI, operating with virtually no oversight. COINTELPRO began as counterintelligence program targeting the Communist Party USA. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover believed communist infiltration threatened American security. The program used infiltrators, wiretaps, and dirty tricks to disrupt organizing. By the 1960s, COINTELPRO targeted civil rights organizations, black nationalist groups, the anti-war movement, feminist organizations, and left-wing political groups. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a major target. The FBI considered King a threat because of his political influence. Agents bugged King's hotel rooms and tapped his phones constantly. The FBI created a fake audio tape using surveillance that purported to show King in extramarital affairs. This tape with an anonymous letter was sent to King before he received the Nobel Peace Prize. The letter suggested King commit suicide, or the tape would be released publicly. This attempted blackmail represents one of the most shocking government abuses in American history. The FBI also targeted the Black Panther Party using infiltration and provocation. Infiltrators encouraged violence, giving justification for arrests. The FBI sent fake letters to rival gangs claiming Panthers were targeting them, provoking gang warfare that resulted in deaths. FBI agents provided information to Chicago police that led to a raid where Black Panther leaders Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were killed in their beds. Documents revealed the FBI provided a floor plan marking where Hampton slept. COINTELPRO was exposed in 1971 when activists calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI broke into an office in Media, Pennsylvania. They stole files documenting operations and sent copies to newspapers. The Washington Post published documents revealing FBI domestic surveillance. The Church Committee hearings in 1975 documented COINTELPRO activities, concluding the FBI had violated constitutional rights on a massive scale. Following revelations, the FBI officially terminated COINTELPRO and instituted new guidelines. However, critics argue similar activities continue under different names. The FBI has acknowledged infiltrating environmental groups, animal rights organizations, and Muslim communities using similar tactics. The legal framework requires more justification and oversight, but the practice of infiltrating and monitoring domestic political groups continues. COINTELPRO demonstrated government agencies would use illegal means to suppress dissent, and that constitutional protections meant little when powerful institutions decided to ignore them. Operation Number 5. Project Artichoke. Interrogation Experiments. 1951 to 1953. Project Artichoke was a CIA program focused on interrogation techniques and behavior modification. Operating from 1951 to 1953, the project explored using drugs, hypnosis, and psychological techniques to extract information and create programmed assassins. The CIA wanted to determine if they could force someone to commit murder, then forget they had done so. Experiments were conducted on prisoners, mental patients, and foreign nationals. The project was absorbed into MKUltra, but Artichoke documents reveal some of the earliest CIA mind control attempts. Project Artichoke began as a successor to Project Bluebird. The CIA was convinced communist countries had developed advanced brainwashing and felt compelled to catch up. The project name came from peeling away layers of consciousness like an artichoke to access hidden information or implant commands. The program operated with virtually no oversight, as researchers believed national security justified extreme measures. The primary goal was developing interrogation techniques that could break any prisoner. Researchers experimented with drug combinations, including heroin, marijuana, cocaine, and mescaline. Subjects were dosed, then subjected to prolonged interrogation. Some experiments kept subjects awake for days while drugged. Others used sensory deprivation combined with drugs. The CIA documented that some subjects suffered permanent psychological damage, but considered this acceptable collateral damage. A secondary goal was creating disposable agents, programmed to carry out assassinations without remembering. The CIA theorized using hypnosis combined with drugs, they could implant subconscious commands. Programmed individuals would carry out missions, then forget everything due to hypnotically induced amnesia. Documents show CIA researchers seriously pursued this, conducting experiments on prisoners and mental patients to determine if such programming was possible. The CIA tested techniques on foreign nationals captured in operations. Because subjects were not American citizens, researchers felt fewer legal constraints. Prisoners would be dosed, subjected to hypnosis, and given commands. Records indicate at least one subject died during experiments, though details remain classified. Artichoke researchers also explored electroshock as an interrogation tool, producing confessions, though subjects often provided false information to stop shocks. By 1953, Project Artichoke was absorbed into MKUltra. The research continued under broader organizational structure. Many techniques developed in Artichoke became standard interrogation methods for decades. Whether hypnotically programmed assassins were created remains classified, though experts believe the concept proved impossible to achieve reliably. When portions were declassified, documents revealed experiments violating every ethical standard for human research. Subjects were not informed, had no ability to consent, and many suffered permanent harm. Operation Number 6. Operation Chaos. Domestic Spying, 1967 to 1974. Operation Chaos was a CIA program illegally spying on American citizens involved in anti-war and political movements. From 1967 to 1974, the CIA violated its charter by conducting surveillance on thousands of Americans. The program infiltrated anti-war groups, opened mail, monitored phone calls, and compiled files on activists. When exposed, Operation Chaos revealed the CIA had operated a massive domestic intelligence network targeting citizens exercising constitutional rights. Operation Chaos began when President Johnson believed anti-war protesters were controlled by foreign governments. Johnson pressured CIA Director Richard Helms to investigate whether Soviet or Chinese intelligence funded American peace movements. Helms knew the CIA charter prohibited domestic operations, but felt compelled to comply. The program operated in complete secrecy, with only a small unit having full knowledge. The CIA created a special operations group, compiling files on over 7,000 Americans and 1,000 organizations. Agents infiltrated anti-war groups, posing as activists to gather intelligence. The CIA maintained lists of individuals to monitor, including prominent leaders, journalists, academics, and activists. Surveillance included following subjects, photographing them at demonstrations, recording phone calls, and monitoring correspondence. One particularly intrusive aspect was the mail opening program. For 20 years, the CIA opened and photographed millions of pieces of mail sent to and from the Soviet Union. This program, called HTLINGUAL, operated from New York, where CIA agents opened letters, photographed contents, and resealed envelopes. The program was completely illegal, but continued for 2 decades. Estimates suggest the CIA opened over 200 million pieces of mail. The CIA also coordinated with local police, sharing intelligence on activists. Operation Chaos provided police with advance warning of demonstrations, allowing prepared responses. CIA files were used to identify leaders who could be targeted for arrest. This created a nationwide network monitoring political dissent. The CIA compiled extensive files on individuals who had committed no crimes. Being listed in anti-war membership or attending peace rallies was sufficient to earn a CIA file. Operation Chaos was exposed in 1974 when journalist Seymour Hersh published articles revealing CIA domestic spying. Congressional investigations, including the Church Committee, showed Chaos violated the CIA charter and multiple federal laws. CIA Director William Colby ordered the program shut down. The Church Committee concluded Operation Chaos represented serious abuse of power. The CIA had targeted Americans exercising First Amendment rights to free speech and peaceful assembly. Congress passed laws including the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to prevent similar abuses, though critics argue similar programs continued. Operation Number 7. Operation Paperclip, Nazi Scientists, 1945 to 1990s. Operation Paperclip was a secret program bringing Nazi scientists to the United States after World War II. Over 1,600 German scientists were recruited, many with Nazi Party membership and war crimes backgrounds. The U.S. government created false employment histories, expunging Nazi records. While officially justified as preventing the Soviet Union from gaining Nazi expertise, the operation protected war criminals and brought individuals responsible for human experiments to work in American laboratories. As World War II ended, American and Soviet forces raced to capture German scientists. The U.S. established the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency to recruit German scientists. The program was named Paperclip after paperclips used to attach new employment files hiding Nazi backgrounds. The most famous recruit was Wernher von Braun, who developed the V-2 rocket. Von Braun was an SS officer who used concentration camp slave labor to build rockets. Thousands of prisoners died in underground factories. The U.S. granted immunity from war crimes prosecution. Von Braun became NASA director and led Saturn V rocket development that took Americans to the moon. His Nazi past was sanitized. Other paperclip scientists had darker backgrounds. Kurt Blohm conducted biological warfare experiments using human subjects. Arthur Rudolph oversaw V-2 production using slave labor, where 20,000 prisoners died. Hubertus Strughold conducted high-altitude and freezing experiments on concentration camp inmates. These men came to America, received citizenship, and worked in military and NASA programs despite war crimes. The recruitment violated President Truman's orders prohibiting bringing Nazi Party members or war criminals to the United States. Intelligence agencies ignored orders, believing scientists' knowledge was too valuable. They created false files, removing references to Nazi Party membership and war crimes. Many paperclip scientists worked at Fort Detrick developing biological weapons. Their expertise came from human experiments in concentration camps. The program remained secret for decades. When journalists uncovered details in the 1980s, the government denied allegations. Eventually, Freedom of Information Act requests compiled evidence. Some paperclip scientists were exposed. Arthur Rudolph renounced citizenship and returned to Germany in 1984 after investigations. The U.S. protected these individuals for decades, blocking extradition. National security interests and space program success were considered more important than justice for Nazi victims. The ethical questions remain controversial. The scientists contributed to American achievements, but at what moral cost? By protecting war criminals, the government became complicit in Nazi crimes. Victims were denied justice, so America could benefit from knowledge gained through atrocities. Operation Paperclip showed that in Cold War competition, morality could be sacrificed for strategic advantage. Operation Number 8, Acoustic Kitty, CIA Cat Spying, 1960s. Acoustic Kitty was an absurd but genuine CIA project attempting to turn cats into mobile listening devices. In the 1960s, the CIA surgically implanted microphones and transmitters into cats, believing they could spy on Soviet officials. The project cost over $20 million and took 5 years. When tested, cats proved completely uncontrollable. The first field test ended when the spy cat was hit by a taxi. The project was abandoned as a complete failure, demonstrating not all CIA operations were successful. The concept originated from CIA technical officers who believed planting listening devices near targets could be solved using animals. Cats were chosen because they could move freely in urban environments without attracting attention. Soviet officials feeding stray cats would never suspect recording devices. The challenge was implanting electronics in living animals and training cats to go where directed. Veterinary surgeons developed procedures to implant a microphone in the cat's ear canal, a radio transmitter at the skull base, and a thin wire antenna woven into fur. Surgery took several hours, requiring extensive healing time. Early attempts failed when implants became infected or the cat's body rejected foreign objects. After many attempts, surgeons developed techniques allowing cats to survive with implants. Training proved more difficult than surgery. Cats are notoriously independent and resist commands. CIA trainers spent months attempting to train cats to approach targets. Food rewards were used, but cats wandered off distracted. Unlike dogs, cats showed little interest in cooperating, regardless of training methods. Technical aspects also presented problems. Early transmitters were too heavy. Battery life was limited. Audio quality was poor. After 5 years and $20 million, the CIA conducted a field test. A cat with functional implants was deployed in a Washington, D.C. park where Soviet officials met. Handlers released the cat. Within minutes, the cat was struck by a taxi and killed. The field test was a complete failure. The expensive cat with sophisticated electronics was destroyed before getting near targets. Following this disaster, the CIA terminated Acoustic Kitty in 1967. Managers decided the concept was fundamentally flawed. Cats could not be reliably controlled. When documents were declassified in 2001, Acoustic Kitty became public knowledge. The absurdity made it a popular example of CIA excess. The project demonstrated poor oversight and judgment. Acoustic Kitty became a cautionary tale within intelligence, showing how not to conduct technical operations. Operation Number 9. Operation Mongoose. Cuba Destabilization. 1961 to 1963. Operation Mongoose was a covert program to overthrow Fidel Castro through sabotage, propaganda, and psychological warfare. Authorized by President Kennedy after Bay of Pigs, the program conducted thousands of sabotage operations. CIA agents destroyed factories, contaminated exports, spread livestock disease, and attempted bizarre Castro assassinations. The operation included propaganda campaigns and plans to stage fake divine interventions to convince Cubans God opposed communism. Operation Mongoose began in November 1961, when Kennedy put Attorney General Robert Kennedy in charge of Cuban operations. The CIA established JM Sonar Wave in Miami, which became the largest CIA station worldwide. At its peak, JM Sonar Wave employed over 300 CIA officers and thousands of Cuban exiles, with an annual budget exceeding $50 million. The sabotage campaign was extensive. CIA agents infiltrated Cuba, conducting operations with anti-Castro Cubans. They destroyed electrical plants, disrupting city power. They contaminated copper shipments, making exports worthless. They burned sugarcane fields, causing economic damage. Locomotives were sabotaged. Oil refineries were set on fire. Documents show over 3,000 sabotage operations were conducted. Biological warfare was part of the campaign. CIA agents introduced swine fever virus devastating Cuba's pig population, forcing slaughter of hundreds of thousands of animals. Documents suggest African swine fever that struck in 1971 may have been CIA introduced, though this remains disputed. Assassination attempts on Castro became increasingly absurd. CIA officers developed exploding cigars. They contaminated Castro's diving suit with fungal spores, hoping to cause skin disease. They planned explosive devices in seashells at his diving spot. All attempts failed. One strange operation involved damaging Castro's public image. Psychological operations officers studied Castro's iconic beard. They developed depilatory chemical that could be placed in shoes. The chemical would absorb through feet, causing his beard to fall out. The CIA believed if Castro appeared clean-shaven, it would damage his authority. The scheme was never implemented, but documents show serious planning. Some of the most disturbing plans involved fake religious interventions. CIA experts proposed using a submarine to project Jesus Christ images in the sky over Havana. This fake second coming would include messages telling Cubans God opposed communism. Planners believed deeply Catholic Cubans would interpret the apparition as divine intervention, requiring sophisticated projection technology never attempted. The Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962 revealed dangerous consequences. Cuban and Soviet leaders believed American sabotage meant attack was imminent, helping convince Soviets to place nuclear missiles in Cuba. When the crisis resolved, Kennedy scaled back operations. The program was officially terminated in 1963 after Kennedy's assassination, though some activities continued. Despite thousands of operations and tens of millions of dollars, Castro remained in power. The Church Committee concluded Mongoose violated international law, representing unauthorized warfare without proper oversight. Operation Number 10. Project Stargate. Psychic Spying. 1978 to 1995. Project Stargate was a U.S. military program investigating psychic phenomena for intelligence gathering. For 17 years, the Defense Intelligence Agency funded research into remote viewing and telepathy. psychics were employed to spy on Soviet facilities and locate hostages using only their minds. The program cost $20 million, producing thousands of reports. When declassified in 1995, documents showed that despite occasional coincidental successes, psychic spying proved no more accurate than random guessing. The project stands as one of the strangest psychological operations attempted during the Cold War. Project Stargate grew from concerns that the Soviet Union was developing psychic warfare capabilities. In the 1970s, American intelligence received reports suggesting Soviets funded extensive paranormal research. Whether accurate or Soviet disinformation remains unclear, but convinced the Defense Intelligence Agency to launch a similar program. Initial research was conducted at Stanford Research Institute, where physicists studied individuals claiming psychic abilities. The program focused on remote viewing, the alleged ability to perceive distant locations using extrasensory perception. Remote viewers were given coordinates and asked to describe what they saw using only minds. Researchers believed if remote viewing was real, it would be the ultimate intelligence tool, allowing agents to spy on any location without presence or detection risk. Remote viewers claimed they could see inside Soviet military bases and observe secret facilities from America. Early experiments seemed promising. Uri Geller, an Israeli psychic, performed demonstrations for CIA officials showing apparent telepathic and psychokinetic abilities. Geller bent spoons, read minds, and described sealed objects. Intelligence officers were impressed, though later investigations suggested Geller used magic tricks rather than genuine psychic powers. Nevertheless, his demonstrations helped convince the military to fund research. The program recruited individuals claiming psychic abilities, training them in remote viewing protocols. Viewers were isolated and given coordinates describing their impressions. Researchers claimed viewers sometimes provided accurate details they could not have known conventionally. These apparent successes generated enthusiasm and continued funding. However, rigorous analysis told a different story. When researchers examined thousands of sessions statistically, they found accuracy was no better than random guessing. For every apparently successful viewing, there were dozens completely inaccurate. The human tendency to focus on hits while ignoring misses created success illusion. Viewers provided vague descriptions applicable to many locations. The American Institutes for Research evaluated Stargate in the mid-1990s, concluding remote viewing had not been proven to work and never provided useful intelligence. Despite negative evaluations, Stargate continued 17 years. The program was terminated in 1995 and declassified. Documents revealed the program cost $20 million, employing dozens of psychics. Thousands of sessions targeted Soviet facilities, but none produced reliably useful intelligence. The broader lesson is even sophisticated organizations can pursue programs based on wishful thinking rather than evidence.